Welcome to Aisha's Stories. Kindly subscribe. Let's get this story started. Kamsi sat in her father's massive office, staring at the documents before her. The same office where Mazi Ugonna once sat, controlling everything that belonged to her. But now, the tables had turned. Ugonna was behind bars, and the mansion, the company, and the fortune were all back in her hands. Yet, why did it feel like the battle was far from over? Chijioke walked in, placing a newspaper on the desk. The front page screamed, ***, new twists in Ojuku Empire, who is the real power behind the wealth? Kamsi frowned. What is this? It's already starting, Chijioke said. People are questioning your authority. Some believe you don't deserve to run this company. She sighed, pushing the paper away. I knew they wouldn't accept me easily. But I'll prove them wrong. A knock came at the door. Barrister Okonkwo stepped in, looking uneasy. You have a visitor, he announced. Who? Chief Ibuka. Chijioke stiffened. Kamsi had heard of Chief Ibuka, a ruthless businessman who was once her father's associate. He had a reputation for taking what he wanted by force. Let him in, Kamsi said. Chief Ibuka walked in, his presence commanding. He was in his late 50s, dressed in a fine, dark blue agbada, with piercing eyes that held no warmth. Kamsiochi, he said, taking a seat without being invited. You've done well for yourself. She folded her arms. What do you want? He chuckled. Straight to the point. I like that. I came to remind you that power is not as simple as holding a title. You're young, inexperienced. You have no idea how this world works. I'm learning fast. Clearly. But you should know your father and I had an understanding. His empire wasn't built alone. I was part of it. Kamsi's heart pounded. And what does that mean? Ibuka leaned forward, his voice dropping. It means you don't own everything you think you do. You're sitting in my chair, little girl. Chijioke clenched his fists. You have no legal claim here. Ibuka smiled. Maybe not legally. But power isn't always about the law. He stood, adjusting his agbada. I came with a friendly warning. This world isn't for the weak. Step aside, Kamsiochi, before it's too late. With that, he walked out, leaving a heavy silence behind. Chijioke turned to her. This man is dangerous, Kamsi. She exhaled slowly. Then I'll be ready. But deep inside, she knew, this was only the beginning. The room felt colder after Chief Ibuka left, but Kamsi refused to let fear control her. She had fought too hard to reclaim her place. She wouldn't let anyone take it away again. Chijioke paced the room. Kamsi, this man isn't just making empty threats. He has influence, connections. And so do I, she interrupted, standing up. I won't let him intimidate me. Barrister Okonkwo cleared his throat. Chief Ibuka has always wanted control over your father's empire. With Mazi Ugonna gone, he sees an opportunity. You must be careful. Kamsi clenched her fists. What are our legal options? Okonkwo sighed. For now, nothing. Legally, everything belongs to you. But power struggles like this rarely stay within the law. I suggest you tread carefully. She nodded, then turned to Chijioke. I need to see our staff. If I'm going to lead this company, they need to trust me. Minutes later, she walked into the conference room, where top executives had gathered. Faces she didn't fully trust. She could sense the doubt in their eyes. A man in his 50s, Mr. Aib, spoke first. Miss Kamsiochi, we respect your inheritance, but running an empire like this is complicated. Your father was a legend. You're young. Young, but capable, she cut in. I grew up in this house. I've seen how things work. And let's not forget, most of you stood by while Mazi Ugonna stole everything from me. So tell me, why should I trust you? Silence filled the room. Another executive, Mrs. Ngozi, sighed. We only want what's best for the company. Good, Kamsi said, stepping forward. Because so do I. And I won't let anyone destroy what my father built. Before anyone could respond, the doors burst open. A security guard rushed in. Madam, there's a problem at the factory. Kamsi's heart raced. What happened? The workers are protesting. Someone told them their jobs aren't secure anymore. Chijioke swore under his breath. Abuka is already making moves. Kamsi grabbed her car keys. Then let's go handle it. As she stormed out, she knew one thing for certain, this battle had just begun. Kamsi's car pulled up in front of the factory, but even from a distance, she could hear the angry voices. Workers stood in groups, waving their hands in frustration. Some held placards. Others shouted. This doesn't look good, Chijioke muttered as he stepped out beside her. Kamsi squared her shoulders. We handle it head-on. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring the murmurs and side glances. The factory foreman, a short man with a tense expression, rushed to meet her. Madam, the workers are refusing to resume work. Someone spread a rumor that you're planning to shut down operations and fire everyone. Kamsi's jaw tightened. *******. One of the workers, an elderly man named Mazi Okri, stepped forward. Madam, we need to know the truth. We can't wake up tomorrow and find ourselves jobless. The crowd echoed his words. Kamsi raised her hand, silencing them. She stepped onto a wooden crate, making sure everyone could see her. Listen to me. Her voice was firm, but calm. I am not shutting down this factory. And I am not firing anyone. The murmuring reduced, but doubt lingered in the air. A younger man in the crowd, Obinna, frowned. Then why did we hear that big men are planning to take over and replace us? Kamsi's hands clenched at her sides. Because someone wants to scare you. Someone who wants to see this company collapse. The workers exchanged glances. You all know my father, she continued. He built this place from the ground up. He believed in hard work, and he valued every single one of you. That has not changed. If anyone is telling you otherwise, they are lying to you. A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. Mazi Okri nodded. Then tell us, madam, what should we do? Kamsi stepped down from the crate. Go back to work. This factory is not closing. If I ever have bad news to share, you will hear it from me directly. Not from rumors. Slowly, the tension eased. One by one, the workers began to disperse. Chijioke exhaled. That was close. Kamsi turned to the foreman. Find out who spread those rumors. I want names. As they walked back to the car, Chijioke shook his head. Abuka is testing you. Kamsi's eyes darkened. Then he's about to learn that I don't break easily. But deep inside, she knew, this was only the beginning of his attacks. Kamsi barely had time to sit when her phone rang. She sighed and picked up. It was Barrister Okonkwo. You need to come to the office immediately, he said, his voice tense. Kamsi glanced at Chijioke. What now? It's Chief Abuka, the lawyer continued. He just filed a lawsuit challenging your inheritance. Her grip tightened around the phone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She ended the call and turned to Chijioke. He's trying to fight me in court now. Chijioke cursed under his breath. That man won't stop until he destroys you. Kamsi exhaled. Then let's make sure he doesn't win. 15 minutes later, she stormed into Barrister Okonkwo's office. He was already seated with a pile of documents in front of him. He claims that your father was mentally unfit when he wrote his will, Okonkwo explained, pushing a file toward her. He's arguing that the will should be nullified. Kamsi's stomach twisted, but she kept her face calm. That's ridiculous. My father was perfectly fine when he signed that will. Okonkwo nodded. We know that. But Abuka is rich and influential. He has hired some of the best lawyers in the country. He will drag this case for as long as possible, hoping to wear you down. Kamsi clenched her fists. Then we fight back. Hard. Okonkwo smiled slightly. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Just then, the door burst open, and to Kamsi's shock, Amora, her old friend, walked in. She hadn't seen Amora since the days she was a maid, and the betrayal still stung. Amora smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Long time, Kamsi. Kamsi folded her arms. What do you want? I came to warn you, Amora said, stepping closer. Abuka is planning something bigger. The lawsuit is just a distraction. Kamsi frowned. Why should I trust you? Amora hesitated. Because I know what it feels like to be used. He promised me things, but he's just as ruthless as everyone says. Chijioke stepped forward. If you know something, say it. Amora swallowed. He's trying to bribe one of the judges. Kamsi's heart pounded. Are you sure? Amora nodded. 100%. Silence filled the room. Then Kamsi turned to Okonkwo. We need to act fast. She knew one thing, Abuka might be powerful, but she wasn't going down without a fight. Kamsi paced the length of the office, her mind racing. If what Amora said was true, then this lawsuit wasn't just about money, it was about power. Abuka wanted her completely destroyed. She turned sharply to Barrister Okonkwo. Can we prove that he's bribing a judge? Okonkwo sighed. It's difficult. These things are never done in the open. We would need solid evidence. Amora shifted nervously. I overheard him talking on the phone. He mentioned a name, Justice Maduka. Kamsi and Okonkwo exchanged glances. Justice Maduka was one of the senior judges handling inheritance cases. If we expose this, Chijioke said, Abuka will be finished. But if we accuse him without proof, Okonkwo added, he will turn it around and say we're the ones trying to manipulate the case. Kamsi took a deep breath. Then we need proof. She turned to Amora. Can you get close to him again? Find out more? Amora hesitated. If he finds out I'm working against him, I'm finished. Kamsi met her eyes. You owe me this, Amora. After everything. Amora swallowed hard, guilt flashing across her face. Finally, she nodded. I'll do what I can. Kamsi's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. ***, you're playing a dangerous game. Walk away before you regret it. ***. Chijioke read the message over her shoulder. He knows we're onto him. Kamsi's jaw tightened. Let him come. I'm ready. But deep inside, she knew, Abuka wasn't done. And whatever he had planned next would be worse than anything he'd done before. Kamsi sat in her car outside the courthouse, her fingers drumming against the steering wheel. Chijioke was beside her, watching her closely. You're too quiet, he said. She exhaled sharply. I'm thinking. They had spent the last 2 days gathering information, trying to confirm whether Justice Maduka was truly working with Abuka. So far, all they had was Amora's word, and that wasn't enough. Her phone rang. It was Amora. Kamsi put it on speaker. Talk. I have something, Amora whispered. I saw Abuka enter a private hotel suite an hour ago. Justice Maduka went in 20 minutes later. Kamsi's grip tightened around the phone. Are you sure? Yes. And I'm still here. I overheard them talking about money. Chijioke leaned forward. Can you record them? I'll try, Amora said. But if they catch me... They won't, Kamsi said firmly. Just be careful. The call ended, and silence filled the car. Chijioke started the engine. Let's go. Kamsi frowned. Where? To that hotel, he said. We're not just sitting here. Kamsi hesitated for half a second before nodding. Drive. 20 minutes later, they arrived at the hotel. It was a high-end place, the type of location powerful men used for secret meetings. Amora met them outside, looking nervous. "I got it," she whispered, handing Kamsi her phone. Kamsi played the recording. First, there was silence. Then, a booker's voice, "I don't care how you do it. Delay the case, dismiss the evidence, just make sure she doesn't win." A deep voice, Maduka's, answered, "That will cost you extra." There was a pause. Then the sound of a suitcase being unzipped. Chijioke smirked. "That's all we need." Kamsi nodded, gripping the phone. "It's time to take a booker down." But just as they turned to leave, a black SUV screeched to a stop in front of them. The doors flung open, and two men in dark suits stepped out. Kamsi's heart pounded. They weren't here to talk. Kamsi's breath caught in her throat as the two men in dark suits approached. Chijioke immediately stepped in front of her, his body tense. One of the men, tall and broad-shouldered, adjusted his suit jacket, revealing the gun tucked at his waist. "Madam, get in the car." Kamsi's pulse raced. "And if I don't?" The second man smirked. "Then we'll make you." Chijioke clenched his fists. "If you touch her—" "Relax," the first man said. "Our boss just wants to talk." Kamsi exchanged a glance with Amora. The recording was still in her hand. If they took her, they'd search her, and the evidence would be gone. Thinking quickly, she handed the phone to Amora. "Take this and leave." The second man grabbed her wrist. "Oh no, you're all coming." Chijioke moved fast, punching the man square in the jaw. The man staggered back, cursing. The other reached for his gun, but Amora let out a scream, drawing attention from a passing hotel security guard. The distraction was enough. Kamsi yanked free and bolted toward the street. Chijioke followed, dragging Amora with him. Behind them, the men shouted, but they couldn't open fire in public. "Run!" Chijioke urged. They darted into a crowded market nearby, weaving between stalls. Kamsi's heart pounded as they reached a small shop. The owner, an elderly woman, eyed them suspiciously. "Please," Kamsi gasped. "Let us hide." Something in her face must have convinced the woman. She gestured toward the back, and they hurried inside just as the black SUV cruised past the market entrance. Kamsi pressed herself against the wall, breathing heavily. Chijioke turned to her. "That was too close." Amora clutched the phone tightly. "They won't stop. A booker is desperate." Kamsi exhaled, steadying herself. "Then we need to move faster." She looked at Chijioke. "We take this recording straight to the media. If we go through legal channels, a booker will buy everyone off. But if the public hears it first, he won't be able to control the damage." Chijioke hesitated, then nodded. "Let's do it." But as they stepped out of the shop, Kamsi's phone vibrated with a message. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning." She swallowed hard. A booker wasn't going down without a fight. Kamsi stared at the message on her phone, her heart hammering. The words were clear, and the threat hung in the air like smoke. "This isn't over," Chijioke said, his voice low. "He's not going to back down." "I know," Kamsi replied, locking her phone. "But neither will we." They walked briskly down the alley, the urgency of the situation weighing on them. Every corner seemed to be filled with hidden dangers now. Amora followed closely behind, her expression unreadable. The phone was still clutched tightly in her hand. Kamsi didn't have time to waste. They needed to get this recording to the media, and fast. They arrived at the car, and Chijioke immediately started the engine. As they pulled away from the market, Kamsi's mind raced, planning their next move. "We'll go straight to the press," Kamsi said. "I know a reporter, Tunde. He's reliable." Amora turned to her. "Are you sure he'll help us?" "He'll have to," Kamsi said, her voice firm. "This is too big to ignore. If Tunde runs the story, the whole country will know." The car sped through the streets, heading toward Tunde's office. The tension in the air was thick. They were running out of time. When they arrived, Kamsi jumped out, leading the others into the building. They were greeted by Tunde's secretary, who immediately ushered them into his office. Tunde was sitting behind his desk, a calm expression on his face until he saw the look in Kamsi's eyes. "What's going on?" he asked, standing up. Kamsi didn't waste time. She handed him the phone. "I need you to run this. Now." Tunde raised an eyebrow. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke," Kamsi said. "You'll hear for yourself. It's about a booker and a judge. They're in bed together, literally." Tunde's eyes widened as he pressed play. He listened to the recording, his expression changing from skepticism to shock. "This is huge," he muttered. "But if this goes out, it's going to cause chaos. Are you ready for that?" Kamsi nodded, determined. "We have no choice." Tunde leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. "I'll make some calls. The whole nation needs to hear this, and we'll make sure a booker feels the heat." As Kamsi left the office, she felt a sense of relief. But the battle was far from over. She couldn't afford to be complacent. A booker had resources, and he wouldn't take this lying down. That night, the media outlets began buzzing with the story. Headlines screamed about a judge caught in a corruption scandal, with a wealthy businessman at the center. The recording spread like wildfire. But as Kamsi lay in bed, trying to relax, a new message came through on her phone. "You think you've won? Watch your back." She exhaled sharply. A booker was going to retaliate, and she needed to be ready. Kamsi couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The message from a booker was chilling, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized how far he would go to protect his empire. The media frenzy had only just begun, and Kamsi was aware that the calm before the storm was about to end. As she sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of the situation pressed down on her. She could hear the echoes of her own heartbeat, steady but heavy. Amora entered the room, her expression serious. "Kamsi, you're not sleeping, are you?" Kamsi didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the message on her phone, fingers hovering over the screen. It was hard to ignore the sense of dread creeping in. "I don't think he'll back off," Kamsi said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Amora sat next to her, eyes scanning the phone in her hand. "You're right. But we can't let fear stop us now. Look at how far we've come." Kamsi nodded, but her mind kept returning to the message. "He's not the type to just let this slide. I've seen his kind before." "I know," Amora agreed, "but we're not alone in this anymore. Tunde's already been in contact with other journalists. And there's the police, they'll have to get involved soon. This is bigger than us now." Kamsi looked up at her friend, her face determined. "We can't trust anyone in a booker's circle. I'm sure there are people in positions of power who'll try to cover this up." Just then, her phone buzzed again. Kamsi quickly unlocked it, half expecting another threat. But this time, it wasn't from a booker. It was a text from an unknown number. ***, meet me at the old warehouse by the docks. 1 a.m. It's about a booker. Don't bring anyone. ***. Kamsi stared at the message, heart pounding. This was either a chance to finally expose a booker's empire or a trap. She wasn't sure which, but she knew she couldn't ignore it. "What is it?" Amora asked, noticing the change in Kamsi's demeanor. "It's a message from someone who claims they know more about a booker," Kamsi replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "They want me to meet them." Amora frowned. "Are you sure you want to go alone?" "I don't have a choice. Whoever this is could have information that will change everything," Kamsi said, her voice firm. "But I need to be careful. I'm not trusting anyone right now." "I'll go with you," Amora insisted. "No," Kamsi said quickly. "You stay here. I'll let you know what happens." Kamsi stood up, putting her phone in her pocket. "I'll take the car and leave it around the corner. If I don't come back by 2 a.m., you get out of here and go to the press. Don't wait for me." Amora didn't argue, but the concern in her eyes was clear. "I'll be fine," Kamsi said softly, but it was more for her own reassurance than anything else. The night air was thick with tension as Kamsi drove to the docks, her headlights cutting through the fog. The only sounds were the tires on wet asphalt and her racing heartbeat. She parked her car in a dark corner of the lot, far from the warehouse, and got out. The old building loomed ahead, its windows shattered, the steel door hanging ajar. Kamsi's steps echoed as she walked toward the entrance, every nerve in her body on high alert. She paused just before stepping inside, taking a deep breath. Whoever was waiting for her here had information, but what if this was a setup? What if they were playing both sides? She pushed the door open, cautiously stepping inside. The air was damp, and the smell of salt water mixed with decay filled her nostrils. The warehouse was eerily silent, save for the distant sound of water lapping at the docks outside. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and lean. Kamsi froze, her eyes narrowing. "You came?" the voice said, muffled by a hood. "I came for answers," Kamsi said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Who are you?" The figure stepped forward, pulling back the hood to reveal a familiar face, one she hadn't expected. "I'm Ngozi," the woman said quietly. "I used to work for a booker." Kamsi's breath hitched as she recognized the face in front of her. Ngozi. The name rattled in her brain for a moment before the pieces fell into place. She had heard of Ngozi before, a booker's former assistant. A woman known for being just as ruthless as him. But what was she doing here? "I didn't think you'd be the one to reach out to me," Kamsi said, trying to steady her nerves. The room seemed colder now, and the shadows felt heavier. Ngozi gave her a tight smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You didn't think it was possible for me to have a change of heart, did you?" Kamsi took a cautious step forward, her gaze never leaving Ngozi's. "Why should I trust you? You've been working for him, haven't you? All this time?" "Yes," Ngozi replied with a slow nod. "I've worked for a booker for years. But you have to understand, things, they aren't what they seem. I'm not here to play games." Kamsi's suspicion grew, but there was something in Ngozi's eyes, a hint of desperation, a flicker of guilt, that made her pause. This wasn't the cold, calculating woman she had imagined. This was someone who was, perhaps, as trapped as she had been all these years. "Then why reach out to me now?" Kamsi asked, her voice hard. "Why the secrecy?" Ngozi's eyes darted around the warehouse, checking for any signs of movement, before she stepped closer to Kamsi. "Because you're the only one who can stop him now." The words hung heavy in the air. Kamsi's heart skipped a beat. "Stop him," she echoed, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you talking about? What's he planning?" Ngozi hesitated for a moment, glancing around once more before speaking in a low voice. "He's been hiding a lot of things, Kamsi. Things that could ruin him, things he's done. I've seen it all. But I couldn't do anything, not when I was under his control. But now, I'm out. I'm trying to help you." Kamsi's mind raced. This was everything she had wanted to know, everything that had kept her awake at night, wondering how deep a booker's influence went, how far he was willing to go to protect his empire. "What do you mean you're out?" Kamsi asked, her voice steady despite the questions swirling in her mind. "You worked for him for years. You were a part of it. You could have left at any time." Ngozi shook her head slowly, the weight of the past clear in her eyes. "It's not that simple. He doesn't let anyone leave, not without consequences. I had to find a way out, and now that I have, I need to help you. You can't take him down alone." Kamsi narrowed her eyes. "How? How do you know all of this? What's going on behind closed doors?" "I've seen the files. The bank accounts, the people he's bought. The businesses he controls. The dirty money," Ngozi whispered, leaning in closer. "I was his eyes and ears for a long time. But there's one thing you don't know, Kamsi. He's planning something big. Something that could take down not just the businesses, but entire governments. He's already started bribing high-ranking officials." The blood drained from Kamsi's face. She had known Ibuka was powerful, But this? This was on a whole new level. How do we stop him? Kamsi asked, her voice determined now. Ngozi's eyes softened, as if she had been expecting that question all along. We expose him. We go public with everything. The corruption, the money laundering, everything. But we need hard evidence. And that's where I come in. Kamsi wasn't sure whether to believe her, but the sincerity in Ngozi's eyes was undeniable. Still, she had to be cautious. One wrong move and everything could come crashing down. We need to act fast, Kamsi said, clenching her fists. But we can't do this without a plan. Ngozi nodded. I have the information. The real evidence, the kind that will bring him down. But we have to move quickly before he realizes what's happening. Kamsi took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. Everything she had been fighting for, everything she had risked, was leading up to this moment. It was time to take Ibuka down. I'm in, Kamsi said, her voice firm. We do this together. The warehouse was eerily silent as they spoke, but outside, the sounds of the night continued, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional bark of a dog. But inside, there was a sense of purpose, of a mission that had just begun. Kamsi couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was only just starting. Ibuka had no idea what was coming for him, but she was ready to expose every single one of his secrets. Will Kamsi and Ngozi be able to pull this off? Will they be able to stop Ibuka before he takes things even further? Watch out for part 4. Drop your comments, let us know the country, county or state you are watching from. Thank you for watching.